Antonio didn't look like a man who owned the skyline. He looked like a man who hadn't slept since Tuesday, mostly because the 3-year-old currently wiping strawberry jam onto his grey hoodie wouldn't let him. He stood in the lobby of the Grand Meridian, his hotel, waiting behind a line of tourists, just wanting a room with a crib and a working heater. He didn't want the penthouse, he just wanted a nap. But when he finally reached the desk and asked for a late checkout, the woman behind the counter didn't see a mogul. She saw a nuisance, and when she raised her hand to strike him across the face in front of a dozen witnesses, she had no idea she had just signed the pink slips for every single person in the building. Welcome to the channel. Today's story is a deep dive into what happens when power hides in plain sight, and what happens when the wrong person finally pushes too hard. If you enjoy these grounded, high-stakes dramas, do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Also, let us know in the comments where in the world you're watching from today. Now, back to the lobby where the air had just turned very, very cold. The pain came first, sharp, hot, radiating from his left cheekbone up into his eye socket. Then came the sound of Lily's wail, high and frightened, because she'd never seen someone hit her daddy before. Antonio's hand went instinctively to his face, fingers pressing against the place where Beverly's palm had connected. He could feel his pulse there, throbbing under the skin. The lobby didn't gasp. It just went silent. Beverly stood behind the marble desk, her chest heaving, and her face twisted into something between triumph and panic. Her hand was still raised slightly, as if she couldn't quite believe what she'd just done, but wasn't ready to take it back either. "I told you," she said, her voice shaking, but loud enough to carry across the polished floors, "that we don't accommodate people who don't have reservations. I don't care what sob story you bring in here with your child." Antonio didn't respond. He was trying to get Lily to stop crying, bouncing her gently against his shoulder, whispering, "It's okay, baby. It's okay," even though his own voice was coming out wrong, tight, and strangled. His cheek was on fire. He could taste copper in his mouth, where he'd bitten the inside of his lip. Behind him, a man in a business suit cleared his throat and looked away, and a couple with matching suitcases suddenly found the ceiling very interesting. The bellhop by the revolving doors didn't move. No one said a word. Antonio had been awake for 37 hours. Lily had been teething, screaming through 2 full nights, and his nanny had quit on Monday after Lily threw a sippy cup at her head. His assistant had been fielding calls from Singapore all week, and Antonio had been sitting on his apartment floor at 4 in the morning with a sobbing toddler, Googling how to make a 3-year-old sleep, like every other exhausted parent in the world. He'd driven to the Meridian because it was the closest property he owned, with a functioning kitchen and a baby crib in storage. He hadn't called ahead. He hadn't thought he needed to. He just wanted a quiet room with blackout curtains and maybe some toast. But he'd walked in, looking like hell, unshaven, in a hoodie with a ketchup stain on the sleeve, carrying a diaper bag that said, "Daddy's Little Monster," in glittery letters. And when he'd finally made it to the front desk, after waiting in line for 20 minutes, Beverly had looked at him like he was something she'd scraped off her shoe. "I just need a room for the night," he'd said. "Something with a crib if you have it." "Do you have a reservation?" "No, but..." "Then I can't help you." "I know it's last minute. I'll pay whatever the rate is." Beverly had given him a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sir, the Grand Meridian is a 5-star establishment. We don't do walk-ins." "I'm not asking for a discount, just a room." We're fully booked. Antonio had glanced at the computer screen in front of her. He could see it from where he stood. Rows of green boxes indicating available rooms. He didn't say anything about it. He was too tired to argue. Please, he'd said quietly. My daughter's been up for 2 days. I just need somewhere she can sleep. That's when Beverly's face had changed. The fake politeness had dropped away, replaced by something colder. If you can't afford proper accommodations, there are motels on Route 9. I suggest you try there. Lily had started fussing then, reaching for the bowl of complimentary mints on the desk. Antonio had shifted her to his other hip, murmuring, "Not now, Lil." "And please control your child," Beverly had added, her voice rising. "This is a place of business." "She's 3. Then maybe you shouldn't have brought her here." Antonio had taken a breath, counted to 5 in his head. "Look, I don't want to cause trouble. You're already causing trouble. You've been standing here arguing with me for 10 minutes when there are other guests waiting. There had been no one else in line. I'm not arguing. I'm asking, and I'm telling you no. Now if you don't leave, I'll have to call security." That's when Antonio had done something stupid. He'd reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet, intending to show her his ID, not to flash his name, just to prove he could pay for the room. But Beverly had seen the movement and misread it entirely. "Are you threatening me?" she'd said, stepping back. "What? No, I'm just—" "You're reaching into your pocket in an aggressive manner. I have every right to defend myself." And then she'd slapped him. Now, and standing in the silent lobby with his daughter sobbing into his neck and his face burning, Antonio felt something crack open inside his chest. Not anger, not yet, just a cold, spreading emptiness. He'd built this place, he'd chosen the marble for the floors, approved the budget for the chandeliers, interviewed the original manager 15 years ago when the Meridian was still just blueprints and a gamble. He'd stood on this exact spot when it was nothing but dirt and rebar, imagining what it could become. And now he was being told to leave. Beverly was still talking, her voice pitching higher. You see what I have to deal with? These people come in here thinking they can just demand whatever they want, and when I enforce policy, I'm the bad guy. Well, I'm done. I'm calling security right now." She reached for the phone. Antonio shifted Lily to his other arm. His daughter had stopped crying, but she was hiccuping, her small hands clutching the front of his hoodie. He could feel her heartbeat against his chest, fast and frightened. "Don't," he said quietly. Beverly paused, her hand on the receiver. "Excuse me? Don't call security." "I will absolutely call security. You're trespassing." Antonio looked at her for a long moment. She was maybe 40, wearing a navy blazer that probably cost a week's salary, her hair pulled back so tightly it looked painful. Her name tag said, Beverly Marsh, Guest Relations Manager. He didn't recognize her. She must have been hired in the last 2 years. During the restructuring, he delegated to his VP of Operations because he'd been busy with Lily's adoption paperwork. "Beverly," he said, keeping his voice level, I'm going to ask you one more time. Is there a room available?" "I already told you. Is there a room available? Yes or no?" Something in his tone must have registered, because Beverly hesitated. Her eyes flicked to the computer screen, then back to him. That's not the point. The point is, yes or no. We don't give rooms to people without reservations. That's policy." "Whose policy?" "Corporate policy. The owner's policy." Antonio almost laughed. Instead, he just nodded slowly. Okay, He turned to leave, and that's when Beverly made her second mistake of the day. "And take your brat with you," she called after him. "Next time, get a babysitter before you come begging for handouts." Antonio stopped walking. Lily lifted her head from his shoulder, her face streaked with tears. "Daddy?" He didn't turn around. He just stood there in the middle of the lobby, feeling the weight of his daughter in his arms and the sting of his cheek and the eyes of every staff member who had watched him get hit and done absolutely nothing. Then he pulled out his phone. The number he dialed wasn't the main corporate line. It was a private cell, the one that only 7 people in the world had access to. It rang twice before someone picked up. "Antonio." The voice on the other end was sharp, alert. Sarah Reeves, his head of operations. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" "I'm at the Meridian." Wait, which Meridian? New York?" "Yeah." There was a pause. "What are you doing there? I thought you were taking the week off." "I was. I am. Lily's been sick. I just needed a room." "And you couldn't just walk into your own hotel and take the penthouse?" "I didn't want the penthouse. I wanted a normal room." Sarah sighed. "Antonio, you're being weird again. Just tell them who you are." "I did." Another pause, longer this time. "What happened?" Antonio glanced back at Beverly, who was now on her phone, probably actually calling security. "I got slapped." "You what?" "The guest relations manager slapped me. In the lobby. In front of witnesses." He heard Sarah inhale sharply. "Are you serious?" "Yeah." "Is Lily okay?" "She's scared. But she's okay." "And you? Are you hurt?" "My face hurts. I'll live." "Antonio, I'm going to need you to tell me exactly what happened, step by step, because I'm about to make some phone calls, and I want to make sure I have this right." So he told her. The whole thing, dash from waiting in line to asking for a room to the slap. He kept his voice flat, factual. When he got to the part about Beverly calling Lily a brat, he heard Sarah swear under her breath. "Okay," Sarah said when he finished. "Okay, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to call legal. I'm going to call PR. I'm going to call every single department head for that property, and I'm going to rain fire down on them like they've never seen. But first, I need you to do something for me." "What?" "I need you to walk back to that desk, and I need you to stay on the line. Can you do that?" Antonio looked down at Lily, who had gone quiet, her thumb in her mouth. "Why?" "Because I'm going to conference in the regional director and the head of HR, and we're going to get this sorted out right now. But I need you there so they can see what they're dealing with." "Sarah, I don't want to—" "Antonio." Her voice went soft, the way it did when she was about to say something he wouldn't like. "You're the gentlest person I know. You're patient to a fault. You've never once used your position to push people around. But this isn't about you being humble. This is about someone putting their hands on you and your kid and thinking they can get away with it. So I need you to let me do my job, okay?" He closed his eyes. "Okay. Good. Now walk back to that desk." Antonio turned around. Beverly was still on her phone, but she looked up when she saw him coming. Her expression shifted from annoyance to alarm. "I told you to leave," she said. "Security's on their way." "That's fine," Antonio said. He held up his phone. "And I've got someone who wants to talk to you." "I'm not talking to anyone. I'm—" "Beverly Marsh?" Sarah's voice came through the speaker, crisp and professional. "This is Sarah Reeves, Chief Operating Officer of the Delacroix Group. I have Antonio Delacroix on the line with me, as well as our head of legal and our VP of Human Resources. We'd like to discuss an incident that occurred in your lobby Approximately 5 minutes ago. Are you able to speak with us? The color drained from Beverly's face. What? I'll take that as a yes. Can you confirm that you struck Mr. Delacroix in the face after denying him a room at the property he owns? Beverly's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. Miss Marsh, I need verbal confirmation. I didn't know. You didn't know what? That assault is illegal, nor that the man you just hit is the owner of the Meridian chain. He didn't say. He shouldn't have to. Sarah's voice could have cut glass. But let's set that aside for a moment. Can you confirm that you refuse to provide a room to a guest despite having availability? We have a reservation policy. Can you confirm that you called his 3-year-old daughter a brat? Silence. Miss Marsh, I'm going to need you to answer the question. Beverly's eyes darted around the lobby. The bellhop was staring now. So was the concierge. A couple checking in at the other end of the desk had stopped mid-signature, watching the whole thing unfold. I was enforcing hotel policy, Beverly said, her voice cracking. He was being aggressive. He's 5'9" and holding a toddler. In what world was he being aggressive? He reached into his pocket to get his wallet, which you would have seen if you'd waited half a second instead of hitting him. Sarah paused. I'm looking at the security footage right now, Ms. Marsh. We have cameras in that lobby. Do you understand what that means? Beverly sat down heavily in her chair. I didn't mean to. You didn't mean to what? Hit him. Because the video shows you raising your hand and making contact with his face. That seems pretty intentional to me. Antonio felt Lily shift against him. She was watching Beverly with wide, confused eyes. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head, murmuring, Almost done, baby. Sarah was still talking. I'm going to have to ask you to collect your personal belongings and leave the premises immediately. Your employment with the Delacroix Group is terminated effective immediately. Our legal team will be in touch regarding the assault charge. Assault? You can't. I'm not. You struck a guest in your place of business. That's assault. Whether we press charges is up to Mr. Delacroix, but either way, you're done here. Beverly's face had gone from white to red. This is ridiculous. I was doing my job. He looked like a homeless person. How was I supposed to know? Stop talking, Sarah said flatly. Every word out of your mouth right now is making this worse. Collect your things. Leave. Don't speak to anyone on your way out. If you have questions about your final paycheck or benefits, you can contact HR on Monday. Do you understand? Beverly stood up, her hands shaking. She looked at Antonio, and for a second, he thought she might apologize. But she didn't. She just grabbed her purse from under the desk and walked toward the back offices, her heels clicking against the marble. Antonio, Sarah's voice was gentler now. You still there? Yeah. How's Lily? He looked down at his daughter, who had her thumb back in her mouth. She's okay. Tired. I'm having someone bring a key card for the owner's suite to the desk. It's being cleaned right now, but it'll be ready in 20 minutes. There's a crib in the closet and a full kitchen. Stay as long as you need. Sarah, you didn't have to. Yes, I did. And Antonio? I'm also going to need you to let me run a full audit of that property. Because if Beverly Marsh was your guest relations manager, I want to know who hired her, who trained her, and who thought it was okay to let her treat people like that. Antonio didn't say anything. I'm serious. This isn't just about her. This is about a culture problem, and we're going to fix it. Okay, get some rest. I'll call you tomorrow. The line went dead. Antonio stood there for a moment, phone still in his hand. Lily still in his arms. The lobby was silent again, but it was a different kind of silence now. The bellhop was staring at him with wide eyes. The concierge had her hand over her mouth. The couple at the other desk had abandoned their check-in entirely and were whispering to each other, phones out. A young woman in a Meridian uniform approached slowly, a keycard in her hand. "Mr. Delacroix, I'm Jenny, the assistant manager. I'm so sorry about what happened. Your suite is almost ready. Can I get you anything? Coffee? And water for your daughter?" Antonio looked at her. She couldn't have been older than 25, and she looked absolutely terrified. "Were you here?" he asked quietly. "When it happened?" Jenny swallowed. "Yes, sir. I was in the back office. I heard it, but I didn't. I should have come out. I'm sorry." "Why didn't you?" Beverly said. "She said if we interfered with her handling guests, we'd be written up. I know that's not an excuse. I'm really sorry." Antonio nodded slowly. "Okay, thank you for the key card. Do you need help with your bags?" "I don't have any, just this." He gestured to the diaper bag. "I can carry that for you." "It's okay, I've got it." He turned toward the elevators, Lily's weight, familiar and grounding in his arms. Behind him, he could hear Jenny on the phone, her voice low and urgent. I'm probably calling someone to let them know the owner was in the building and things had just gone very, very wrong. The elevator doors opened. Antonio stepped inside, pressed the button for the top floor, and watched the lobby disappear as the doors slid shut. Lily lifted her head. "Daddy, that lady was mean." "Yeah, baby, she was." "Why was she mean?" Antonio leaned against the elevator wall, suddenly exhausted. "I don't know. Sometimes people are just mean." "Did it hurt?" He touched his cheek. It was still tender. "A little bit." "I'm sorry, Daddy." "It's not your fault, Lil." She put her head back on his shoulder. "Can we have pancakes?" Antonio closed his eyes, feeling the elevator rise. "Yeah, baby, we can have pancakes." The owner's suite was exactly the way Antonio remembered it. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, a kitchen stocked with basics, a bedroom with blackout curtains, and a bed that could fit 6 people. The crib was in the closet, still in decent shape despite not being used in years. He set Lily down on the couch and went to work setting up the crib, his hands moving on autopilot. By the time he was done, she'd found the remote and turned on the TV, cartoons already playing at low volume. "Lily, come here. Let's get you changed." She padded over, still clutching the remote. Antonio dug through the diaper bag for clean clothes, found a pair of pajamas with dinosaurs on them. As he helped her into them, his phone started buzzing. He ignored it the first 3 times. On the 4th, he checked the screen. "Sarah again." He answered. "Yeah?" "Don't hang up. I know you're exhausted, but I need to tell you what's happening." Antonio sat on the edge of the bed, watching Lily climb into the crib on her own. "Okay. I've been on the phone for the last 40 minutes. I've talked to legal, HR, the regional director, and the head of security. Here's where we're at. Beverly Marsh is gone. That's done. But we've also identified 3 other staff members who were present during the incident and did nothing. The bellhop, the concierge, and a front desk attendant. They're all being suspended pending investigation." "Sarah, I'm not done. I also pulled the complaint logs for the Meridian over the last 6 months. Antonio, this isn't the first time Beverly's pulled something like this. There are at least a dozen complaints about her being rude, dismissive, or outright hostile to guests who didn't meet her standards. And every single one of those complaints was filed and then buried by the previous regional director. Antonio rubbed his eyes. Why? Because the Meridian had a 92% occupancy rate and Beverly was good at upselling premium suites, so they let it slide. Who's the regional director? Was Todd Brennan. I fired him 20 minutes ago. Antonio went still. Sarah, you can't just… I can. And I did. He had access to those complaints, and he chose to ignore them. That's a leadership failure, and I'm not letting it stand. He's out. I'm promoting his deputy, Rachel Lynn, to interim regional director. She's already on site at the Meridian going through personnel files. Antonio didn't say anything. He was watching Lily in the crib, curled up on her side, with her thumb in her mouth, her eyes already starting to close. Sarah's voice softened. I know you don't like this. I know you think I'm being too harsh. But Antonio, if we let this go, it sends a message. It tells every single employee in every single property that they can treat people like garbage as long as the numbers are good. Is that the company you want to run? No? Then trust me. I'm handling it. He heard a click on the line, and then another voice came through. Antonio, it's Greg. Greg Portman, head of legal. I need to talk to you about the assault. I'm not pressing charges. You should. You were struck by an employee in a public place. There's video evidence. This is open and shut. I don't want to press charges. Antonio, Greg, I appreciate it, but I'm not doing it. She's already lost her job. That's enough. There was a long pause. Okay, but I'm documenting everything. If she tries to sue for wrongful termination, we'll need it. Fine. Sarah came back on the line. Antonio, there's one more thing. I'm instituting a company-wide review of our guest services protocols. Every property, every manager, every complaint log. I want to know if this is happening anywhere else, and if it is, I want it stopped. This is going to take time, and it's going to cost money, but it needs to happen. Are you okay with that? Antonio looked at Lily. She was asleep now, her breathing soft and even. Yeah, do it. Okay, get some rest. I'll call you tomorrow with updates. Sarah? Yeah? Thank you. Don't thank me. Just take care of yourself. And Lily. The line went dead. Antonio put his phone on silent and set it on the nightstand. He pulled the blackout curtains closed, blocking out the city lights, and then lay down on the bed, fully clothed. His face still hurt. He could feel the bruise forming under his skin, spreading across his cheekbone. He'd been slapped before. Once, in college, by a girl who thought he was someone else, and once by his father when he was 16 and had come home 2 hours past curfew. But this was different. This had been in public, in front of his daughter, in a place he'd built with his own hands. And the worst part wasn't the slap itself. It was the silence afterward. The way everyone had just stood there, watching, doing nothing. He thought about Beverly Marsh, somewhere in the city right now, probably telling her version of the story to whoever would listen. How she'd been attacked by some crazy guy with a kid. How she'd defended herself. How she'd been unfairly fired. He thought about Todd Brennan, and the regional director, who'd buried a dozen complaints because the numbers were good. He thought about Jenny, the assistant manager, who'd been too scared to help. And he thought about Lily, who'd seen her father get hit and hadn't understood why. Antonio turned on his side, facing the crib. Lily was snoring softly, her small chest rising and falling. She looked peaceful, safe. He'd built an empire so she could have this, so she could grow up in a world where she never had to worry about money or safety or whether there'd be food on the table. He'd worked 80-hour weeks, sacrificed relationships, missed birthdays and holidays, and countless other moments, all so he could give her the kind of life he'd never had. But what kind of life was it really, if the people working in his own buildings didn't have basic human decency? What was the point of owning the skyline if he couldn't even get a room without being humiliated? He closed his eyes, but sleep didn't come. His mind was too loud, replaying the moment over and over. The sound of the slap, Lily's crying, Beverly's voice calling her a brat. Around 2 in the morning, his phone buzzed. He checked it, expecting Sarah or Greg. It was a text from Rachel Lynn, the new interim regional director. "Mr. Delacroix, I've completed my initial review of the Meridian staff. I've identified 14 employees who either witnessed the incident or were aware of Beverly Marsh's pattern of behavior and failed to report it. I'm recommending immediate termination for 6 of them and mandatory retraining for the remaining 8. I'll have a full report on your desk by Monday. I'm deeply sorry for what happened to you and your daughter. This should never have occurred. R.L." Antonio read the text 3 times, then set his phone down. 14 people, 6 terminations. He thought about what Sarah had said, about sending a message, about the kind of company he wanted to run. He picked up his phone and typed a reply. "Thank you, Rachel. Move forward with your recommendations. But I want exit interviews for everyone being let go. I want to know why they thought this was acceptable. And I want the results shared with every manager in the company." AD, he hit send and put the phone back down. Lily stirred in her sleep, making a small whimpering sound. Antonio got up, went to the crib, and gently rubbed her back until she settled. Then he went into the kitchen and made himself a cup of tea. He didn't drink. And Antonio woke to sunlight, streaming through a gap in the curtains and the sound of Lily singing to herself in the crib. He checked his phone. 9:47. He'd slept for almost 7 hours. His face still hurt, but the sharp sting had faded to a dull ache. He got up, went to the bathroom, and looked at himself in the mirror. There was a bruise on his left cheek, purple and angry. It would be there for a week, at least. "Daddy," Lily called from the other room. "I'm hungry." "Coming, baby." He changed her diaper, got her dressed in the spare clothes from the diaper bag, and carried her into the kitchen. The fridge was stocked with basics: eggs, milk, bread, butter. He made scrambled eggs and toast, set Lily up at the counter with a plate and a sippy cup of orange juice. While she ate, he checked his phone. 43 messages, not most from Sarah, updating him on the situation. A few from Greg, about legal next steps, one from Rachel Lynn, with a preliminary report attached, and one from a number he didn't recognize. "Mr. Delacroix, this is Jenny from the front desk. I know I don't have the right to contact you directly, but I wanted to apologize in person for not helping you yesterday. I was a coward, and I'm ashamed of myself. I understand if you want me fired. I would have fired me. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, and that I'm going to do better. Jenny Kowalski." Antonio stared at the message for a long time. Then he forwarded it to Sarah with a note. "Don't fire this one. Put her in the retraining group." Sarah's reply came 30 seconds later. "Already did. She was the first person to call me after you left the building. She gave me names, dates, and details on every complaint Beverly buried. She's one of the good ones." Antonio felt something loosen in his chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but maybe the beginning of it. He finished his tea and made Lily pancakes because he'd promised. While she ate, he called Sarah. "You're up early," she said by way of greeting. "Couldn't sleep. What's the status?" The Meridian's a mess, but we're cleaning it up. Rachel's doing a full audit of the staff. I've got HR interviewing everyone who was on shift yesterday, and I've scheduled a meeting with the entire Delacroix management team for Monday to go over new protocols. What kind of protocols? The kind that prevent this from ever happening again. Mandatory anti-discrimination training, anonymous complaint systems, regular audits of customer feedback, and a zero-tolerance policy for staff who witness misconduct and don't report it. Antonio leaned against the counter. That's going to cost money. I don't care. It's the right thing to do. What about Beverly? Has she said anything? Her lawyer called. They're threatening a wrongful termination suit. Let them. We've got video. That's what Greg said. He's not worried. He thinks they'll drop it once they see the footage. Antonio rubbed his eyes. And Todd, the regional director? He's already hired a lawyer too. He's claiming he didn't know about the complaints, that they were buried by his assistant. It's bull, but we'll let legal handle it. Okay. There was a pause. How are you doing, Antonio? Really? He looked at Lily, who had syrup all over her face and was grinning at him. I'm okay. Tired, but okay. And Lily? She's fine. She ate half a pancake, and now she's trying to lick the plate. Sarah laughed. Good. Listen, take the rest of the week. Don't worry about anything. I've got it covered. Sarah, I appreciate it, but I should… Antonio, you were assaulted in your own hotel. Take the damn week. Rest. Spend time with Lily. Let me handle this. He wanted to argue, but he didn't have the energy. Okay, thank you. Stop thanking me. I work for you, remember? Still. Yeah. Call me if you need anything. Otherwise, I'll see you Monday. She hung up. Antonio put his phone down and went to wipe Lily's face with a napkin. She squirmed, giggling. Daddy, no. Yes, you're covered in syrup. I like syrup. I know you do, baby. He cleaned her up, carried her to the couch, and turned on cartoons. She curled up against him, her small hand clutching his shirt. He wrapped his arm around her and let himself breathe. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Rachel Lynn. Update. I've completed interviews with all staff on duty yesterday. 6 terminations confirmed. 8 employees in mandatory retraining. 2 voluntary resignations. I'm also recommending we bring in an outside consultant to assess workplace culture across all properties. Please advise. RL, Antonio typed back, approved. Move forward with all recommendations. Thank you for your work on this. He set the phone down and looked out the window. The city stretched out below him, endless and indifferent. Somewhere down there, Beverly Marsh was probably telling her story. Todd Brennan was probably hiring lawyers. The fired employees were probably scrambling to find new jobs. And Antonio was sitting in a suite at the top of a building he owned, holding his daughter and trying to figure out how he'd ended up here. He'd started with nothing, literally nothing. He'd grown up in a 1-bedroom apartment with his mom and 2 sisters, sleeping on a couch that smelled like cigarettes and mildew. His mom had worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices at night and serving lunch at a diner during the day. There had never been enough money, never enough food, never enough space. When he was 17, his mom had died of an aneurysm. Just dropped dead in the middle of her shift at the diner. Antonio had been at school when it happened. By the time he got to the hospital, she was already gone. He'd raised his sisters after that. Dropped out of college, worked 3 jobs, kept them fed and clothed and in school until they were old enough to take care of themselves. And then, when they didn't need him anymore, he'd gone back to school, finished his degree, and started working in real estate. He'd been good at it. Really good. He had an eye for properties that no one else saw potential in, and he wasn't afraid to take risks. By the time he was 30, he'd bought his first hotel, a rundown motel on the outskirts of Newark that everyone said was a lost cause. He'd renovated it, turned it into a boutique property, and sold it for 3 times what he'd paid. And then he'd done it again and again. By 35, he owned 12 properties across the East Coast. By 40, he had 37. And now, at 43, the Delacroix Group owned 82 hotels in 16 countries. But he'd never forgotten where he came from. He'd never forgotten what it was like to be invisible, to be dismissed, to be treated like you didn't matter. And yesterday, in the lobby of his own hotel, he'd been reminded. "Daddy," Lily was looking up at him, her eyes wide and curious. "Are you sad?" "No, baby, just thinking." "About what?" "About how lucky I am to have you." She smiled, showing all her tiny teeth. "I love you, Daddy. I love you too, Lil." She went back to watching cartoons, and Antonio closed his eyes, letting the exhaustion finally catch up with him. The new protocols went into effect on a Monday. Sarah sent out a company-wide memo outlining the changes, along with a detailed account of what had happened at the Meridian. She didn't name Antonio specifically, but she didn't have to. Word had gotten out. Within a week, and every employee in the Delacroix Group knew that the owner had been slapped by a manager and that heads had rolled because of it. The story made the rounds on hospitality industry blogs, though the details were vague and often exaggerated. Some said Antonio had fired the entire staff. Others said he'd sued Beverly Marsh for millions. A few claimed he'd shut down the Meridian entirely. None of it was true, but Antonio didn't bother correcting the record. He was too busy implementing the changes Sarah had recommended. The outside consultant, a woman named Dr. Ava Chen, who specialized in workplace culture, spent 3 months auditing every property in the Delacroix portfolio. Her report was 200 pages long and brutally honest. There were problems everywhere. Not as severe as the Meridian, but problems nonetheless. There were staff who felt undervalued, managers who played favorites, complaint systems that didn't work. Antonio read every page, made notes in the margins, and started making changes. He hired a new VP of Human Resources, a man named Toby Reyes, who'd spent 15 years working in labor relations and had a reputation for being fair but firm. He instituted quarterly employee surveys, anonymous feedback systems, and mandatory management training. He raised wages across the board, not because he had to, but because it was the right thing to do. And he started visiting properties unannounced, not to spy, just to see, to talk to the staff, to hear their concerns, to understand what was working and what wasn't. He went to the Boston Meridian and spent an afternoon shadowing a housekeeper. And he went to the Miami property and helped the kitchen staff during a dinner rush. He went to the Seattle hotel and sat in on a staff meeting where employees aired grievances about their schedules. And every time, he introduced himself the same way. "Hi, I'm Antonio. I own the place. What can I do better?" Some of the staff were skeptical at first. They thought it was a gimmick, a PR stunt. But Antonio kept showing up, kept listening, kept making changes. And slowly, people started to believe him. The Meridian in New York got a complete overhaul. Rachel Lynn brought in a new management team, retrained the existing staff, and instituted a guest satisfaction program that actually worked. Within 6 months, the hotel's rating on review sites went from 3.2 stars to 4.7. Jenny Kowalski, The assistant manager, who'd apologized, was promoted to guest services supervisor. She ran the retraining program for the 8 employees who'd been given a second chance, and she did it with a combination of empathy and accountability that impressed everyone, including Antonio. Beverly Marsh's wrongful termination suit was dropped after her lawyer saw the security footage. She tried to get hired at a competitor, but word had spread in the industry. No one wanted to take the risk. Todd Brennan, the former regional director, settled out of court for an undisclosed amount and signed an NDA. Antonio never found out what happened to him after that, and he didn't care. As for Antonio himself, he went back to his normal routine, or as normal as it could be with a 3-year-old. He worked from home most days, Nye taking calls from the kitchen, while Lily played with blocks on the floor. He hired a new nanny, a woman named Grace, who was patient and kind and didn't mind when Lily threw sippy cups. He took Lily to the park, to the zoo, to the children's museum. He read her stories before bed and sang her terrible off-key lullabies that made her giggle. And every night, after she was asleep, he'd sit in his office and go through the day's reports, employee feedback, customer reviews, financial statements. He read every word, looking for patterns, looking for problems, looking for ways to do better. Because that's what this was really about, he'd realized. Not revenge, not punishment, just the simple, exhausting work of trying to build something good. One evening, about a month after the incident, Sarah called him. "I've got news," she said. Good or bad?" "Good, I think." Dr. Chen finished her final report. She says we've made significant progress in addressing the culture issues. She's recommending we continue with the quarterly audits and the anonymous feedback systems, but overall, she's impressed. Antonio leaned back in his chair. "That's good. There's more. I've been talking to some people in the industry. Word's gotten out about what we're doing. The wage increases, the training programs, the culture audits. People are paying attention." "Okay? Antonio, we're getting applications from top-tier talent. People who wouldn't have looked at us twice before. They want to work for a company that actually gives a damn about its employees." He smiled. "That is good. Yeah, so, good job. For getting slapped and all." "Sarah, too soon. Way too soon." She laughed. "Sorry, but seriously, you did good. You could have just fired Beverly and moved on, but you didn't. You actually fixed the problem. That matters." "I had help." "Yeah, but it was your call, so take the credit." They talked for a few more minutes, going over logistics for an upcoming board meeting, and then said goodnight. Antonio sat in the quiet for a while, listening to the hum of the city outside his window. His face didn't hurt anymore. The bruise had faded weeks ago, leaving only a faint shadow that would probably disappear entirely in another few days. But he remembered it. The sting of the slap, the sound of Lily crying, the cold silence of the lobby. He remembered it, and he carried it with him. Not as a wound, but as a reminder. And Antonio didn't go back to the Meridian for a long time, not because he was avoiding it, but because he didn't need to. Rachel and her team had things under control, and there were other properties that needed his attention. But one Saturday, about 3 months after the incident, he found himself driving past the hotel with Lily in the back seat. She was singing along to some kid's song on the radio, completely oblivious. On impulse, he pulled into the parking garage. "Where are we going, Daddy?" Lily asked. "Just stopping by somewhere for a minute." He parked, unbuckled her from her car seat, and carried her into the lobby. It looked the same. Marble floors, elegant chandeliers, Tourists milling around with suitcases, but it felt different. Quieter, somehow, calmer. Jenny was at the front desk, helping an elderly couple check in. She looked up when she saw Antonio, and her eyes went wide. "Mr. Delacroix, I didn't know you were coming. Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine. I was just in the neighborhood." She finished with the couple, sent them on their way, and came around the desk. "It's really good to see you. And you too, Lily." Lily waved shyly. "How's it going?" Antonio asked. Jenny's face lit up. "Really good, actually. We just got a 5-star review from a guest who said our staff was the friendliest they'd ever encountered, and our occupancy is up 12% from last quarter." "That's great." "Yeah, Rachel's been amazing, and the new training program is actually useful. I feel like I know what I'm doing now." Antonio smiled. "I'm glad." They talked for a few more minutes, and then Antonio said his goodbyes. He was halfway to the door when he heard someone call his name. He turned. It was the bellhop, the one who'd been in the lobby that day, the one who'd stood there and done nothing. "Mr. Delacroix?" The kid looked terrified. I wanted to say I'm sorry for not helping you that day. I should have. I know that now." Antonio studied him. He couldn't have been older than 22. "What's your name?" "Kevin. Kevin Wu." "You're still working here?" "Yes, sir. I'm in the retraining program. I'm trying to do better." Antonio nodded slowly. "Okay, Kevin. Keep trying." "I will. I promise." Antonio left the hotel, carrying Lily back to the car. She was quiet, her head resting on his shoulder. "Daddy?" she said softly. "Yeah, baby." That was the place where the mean lady was. "Yeah? Is she gone?" "Yeah." "Ah, she's gone." "Good." Antonio buckled her into her car seat, kissed her forehead, and drove home. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just the sound of a building going quiet. If you think Antonio made the right call by clearing the house, let us know why in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and like for more stories of hidden power and ultimate reckoning. See you in the next one.